Hey, this is Ben from T3, and I have the second game from the matchup with Darren and I from the tournament at Gameology. Again, Darren is on the right, playing Near Earth Hub this time, and I am on the left, playing Kit. And the one thing I didn't mention last tournament, or excuse me, I didn't mention last video, is that Darren is another one of the 7 guys that we have that are all going to Worlds to play Netrunner. So these tournaments leading up to Worlds in the beginning of November we're using as practice to get ourselves ready. So we're testing potential decks, and that's why we're kind of not holding back. You know, normally I don't like to play super competitive stuff for local tournaments just because it doesn't enable growth, I feel. But you know, gotta do what you gotta do to practice. So a little bit different, we see Darren playing NEH from what I did here. He ices up R&D and starts throwing out central servers. And on the other side, in my hand here, we see Diesel, Plascrete, Maker's Eye, Ghost Runner, and I already had a Proco, so really nice to see professional contacts at the beginning of the game, so I can just start drawing for my pieces and getting money while I do so. So while it's not fast, definitely not as fast as, you know, Magnum Opus or something like that might be, it's much professional contacts is a lot better in this Kit deck because it lets me draw my cards, and then since most of my cards play for 1, just like this Refractor, I can draw up and play cards very, very quickly and just start attacking. So running HQ, and I also like to try and get the ice on HQ and R&D resed as quickly as possible because my multi-access comes in the way of Maker's Eye and Legwork, which you can see the Maker's Eye in my hand. So knowing what I have there to deal with makes it so I can count what I need with my recurring credits and with stealth credits. And on the other side here, Darren is fortifying HQ a little bit and drawing up and gaining credits. And I didn't see what he installed at the beginning of the game, but I have a feeling like it's probably a San since he hasn't resed it by now or scored it. And Darren has a really cool agenda makeup out of this NBN, and hopefully we'll get a chance to see what that is a little bit later. So I play Ghost Runner and I dirty laundry the remote to see what that is, and it is a San, so get some money, get a little bit of scouting done, and that kind of propels me into the Maker's Eye. So you get to see 3, and I whiff. None of those 3 are agendas, which means it's time to build. That's what I like to do. And Darren, it looks like he just drew a wrap around, and I see a few more ice in his hand, but I can't quite make out what they are. So most likely we're going to see him ice up at the very least the remote, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see him ice up the remote and R&D here, because it is pretty cheap for me to get through the Lotus Field with Refractor. It's just 1 stealth credit to pump and 1 to break. So really a nice little, you know, nothing too expensive, and that's exactly what he does. I think that was a wraparound in front of R&D, and I didn't see what it was in front of the remote. And we know he has Biotic as well. And I diesel for some quick cards because I don't really like using Ghost Runner as my only source of stealth credits, because once they're used, they're gone. And at this point in the deck, there wasn't any way to recur anything. There were no clone chips. Well, there still are no clone chips, but there's no same old things or no deja vus or anything like that. So once I use a card in this deck, it's pretty much gone, which isn't bad. It's just a different build than what you typically see out of Shapers. Like, you know, Kate is probably more infamous for recurring through test runs and clone chips, and Noise is famous for doing the same now with clone chips and caches and whatnot for economy. And this might be one of my favorite things about this deck, is it's really, really explosive. Just diesel, install a bunch of stuff for cheap, and make a run. And Darren rezzed the pop-up, so he's going to gain some money, which I'm sure will power up a Biotic pretty soon. But this is a legwork run, so hopefully I can, you know, catch any agendas that he has in his hand before he gets those out. But if I had just been running on HQ regularly, at this point, I think I probably would have bounced to try and not give him as much money. Alright, so Darren has 2 Biotics, which is a little bit scary. He can... Biotic, I think, is a huge threat. Well, obviously, it's a huge threat with Near Earth Hub, and it works really, really well for him with the pop-up windows, because now if I want to run HQ, he gets free money, which he can then use for... If I run HQ once now, that's half of a Biotic labor. And he already has enough money where it's a little bit of a concern, and I don't want to let him do it. So giving him more money just to keep... And with the 2 Biotics, I know he can just do it again. Alright, so he, of course, after the Maker's Eye run, he top decks the Beal. I just didn't think that was quite going to happen, but he does have the Res Sansan. And I just want to keep building and applying pressure. Now that I have the Cloak, it's really cheap to get into most things, to pump and break. So even though he has a wraparound and a Lotus Field, it still only cost me 2 real credits at this point. And I steal that Astro Script, so, you know, I guess a payback payback sucks. As I say, Darren top-decked the Project Beal, and I top-decked the Astro Script, which he definitely would have preferred to see. We saw how effective it can be once those start getting chained. And in the meantime, I'm just going to keep drawing and keep trying to apply pressure. And top decks the agenda again. And it's a Heal of Hands, which you really don't see out of NBN too often. But it's really strong, because now Darren doesn't have money, but he can just click, he can take an entire turn and click for 4 credits. Which doesn't sound too enticing, but really when the alternative at this point would be taking an entire turn to click for 3 credits, that extra credits will put him in range of his other economy. So 2 clicks to gain 3 credits, and then he can even install, which is probably more effective. So 2 clicks to gain 3 credits and install. It's something on paper it doesn't, I don't think, it doesn't do as much justice as what the card will do in play. And I am continuing to draw up and looking for options, looking for more ways to make it cheap and make it free to get in. So we see, it looks like we have a Corroder in my hand. I see Professional Contacts and a Lockpick, which I almost played but didn't want to run last click. And didn't quite see what that card over R&D was, but it wasn't an agenda. So comparing the board state between myself and Darren, he has a lot of ice and some economy in that sand, but I have ways to easily get in to pretty much everywhere, and along with some sustained economy with Katie, and I only have to do that once a turn, and I can draw up cards and gain money and build my hand with professional contacts, and then play the cards with for free, basically, between the draw and the play, because Proco gives me one and most of the cards in the deck cost one, and those single credit cost cards continue to build my momentum and snowball because they're recurring credits that I use every single turn as long as I run. And since I almost always run, it's usually a good deal. And case in point here, running on R&D, where Darren reses the Archer. And just to show you how highly Darren thinks of Helahands, he kept it and sacked the Project Beal. So sacrificed the extra agenda points for more sustainable economy, which is definitely a really good thing for him to do in his position. And this is what's beautiful about Kit. I can get around Archer without losing my rig. Kit will turn it into a code gate, and because I have those two sources of stealth credits, Refractor can get up to strength. And other than that, I'm letting the run end because I don't have money to get through, but I broke the Corp Gains 2 subroutine along with the 2 trash programs. So now I know the threat is there and I can kind of plan accordingly. And it's just really strong that I know that I don't have a lot to fear first click. I don't need to get out my dagger before I make a lot of runs. Jinteki is the same way. As long as I only have one piece of ice, or it's only one unresed piece of ice, I know what my threats are. And Darren is going to continue to ice up R&D. Definitely doesn't want me to get in there, but so now I can't get in there with just the Refractor, assuming he reses that first piece of ice, but that's fine. As he put it, I'm going to take my ball and go elsewhere. I had enough luck with R&D, so I can just spend my time to build a little bit more. And I think the wise move here is going to be to start attacking his, economy, or attacking his Sansan, and I'm going to blow that up here. I know he has the 2 biotics, and you can see that in his hand, but he is not within credit range. And since the Sansan was already resed, it would only cost him 2 credits to score out potentially another Astroscript. And I just can't. You can't let that live. Once you start seeing NBN have a Sansan out, if you don't trash it quickly, you're gonna have a bad time. It's too easy. You know, one R&D access that you don't check, that can turn into an Astroscript, which quickly turns into 2 Astroscripts. And it's just not good. And I blow up the new Sansan that Darren had installed. Even though he doesn't have the money, that's probably a good play just to keep it in check. It's the downside with this Kit deck is the economy might not. In this version, the economy wasn't as strong as it is now, so it's harder for me to blow up his assets continuously, and I'd rather kill the Sansan as opposed to the marked accounts. Really, other than Sansan and his operations, like the biotics, the only thing he's going to spend money on is his ice, and I can get through ice pretty efficiently, so it doesn't really bother me if a corp is willing to spend a lot of money on their ice. Spending a lot of money on Sansans, that, however, is a problem. Darren continuing to build his board state. And after installing the card, is Place the biotic shipment from... Okay. So I didn't think he was going to be able to do this, but he drew... He must have drawn the cards that he needed, and was able to pump out an agenda with shipment from Sansan. And of course it's the Astro script. But hey, what can you do? So I was trying to figure out what the optimal play here is, and I decide to legwork to try and make sure that he doesn't have another agenda. And I think the reason I did that is because I haven't drawn a dagger yet. So that archer is a pretty solid piece of ice. And I'm sure I'm just digging for more pieces, which I find myself doing quite a bit. And again, Darren's just showing off the efficiency for Helahan. So he got himself 3 credits on this turn and loaded marked accounts with 1 turn. So effectively, he just got himself 6 credits in 1 turn, unless I trash the marked accounts. But it's a really efficient play to use Helahans for your economy and supplement the Helahans with the asset economy instead of using the assets as kind of the basis. Because the assets can get destroyed once that agenda is scored, which it's only a 3-1, so it's not even really hard, since it is a 3-1 and not like a, I don't know, it's not like a 5-3 like you'll see out of Wayland for money. So you can easily just score that fast, and it's worth the risk because it's only worth 1 point to the runner. And yeah, so he is still scoring with the AstroScript token. Well, he scored with the AstroScript token and has another Beal, and since we know he has the Biotic in hand, if he gets to game point, if he gets to 7 credits, it's a really big concern. And I need to check to make sure that he won't draw an agenda soon. And I Maker's Eyed and took a chance that he couldn't res whatever's in front of the archer. But if he had resed whatever's in front of the archer, I would have been in a bit of trouble, just because I have no answer without a dagger in play. And doing the math with those 3 lockpicks. Okay, so I trashed the Jackson, and I'm starting. It doesn't look like I'm in a great spot. So the tables have quickly turned, and now Darren is sitting in a much better play position. Well, Near Earth Hub will be Near Earth Hub, and it's just a very strong deck. And Darren now has the board state, a far superior board state than I do. He has the sustained economy with Helahans and marked accounts, and along with an effective HQ deterrent in 2 pop-ups. So if I want to try and run HQ, I am just feeding him money, which he wants me to do every time, but It's not worth it. Not worth it at all to just keep giving it NEH money. And my recurring credits are not as good because I only have, well, first of all, I only have one recurring credit that can be used for something else that's not refractor. You know, it's all lockpick except for cloak, which I'd prefer to see more cloak because I can use that with corroder and I can use that with dagger. Which I still haven't quite seen, but we see the boxy. I see the boxy in my hand, which is the only source of MU that I run. And there we go. After however many minutes, I finally drew the last piece of my puzzle, which is the dagger. Which is still just as effective at getting through Archer as refractor is. I just have to pump it twice and then spend some money to break. But Darren top decked the final Beal, or had the, well, so we were talking about it here, and what had happened was that the Project Beal that Darren won off of had been in his hand the entire time. And all of those legworks and random HQ accesses had just completely whiffed every single time. And he just slow rolled it, and it worked out. So, good play. I thought HQ was bone dry at that point, and the game was an R&D, but wasn't the case. But yeah, that is the end of the game. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you soon.